Good evening or good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the MJ Hurley Show presented by TDT Media and Erie Insurance. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in on this fine morning, afternoon, evening, whenever you are watching. For those of you who have watched in the past, did an episode a little bit earlier this year. We're going to consistently be doing this now as one of the TDT Media shows that's going to be produced every single week. With that being said, shout out to Cy in the background who's helping me produce these shows going forward. For those who have not been around for years, this will be a continuation of what I used to do called Next Man Up with MJ Hurley. That was the first show I ever did, along with my XFL show back in 2020 during the good old COVID days. But now that we've improved, upgraded, all of that good stuff with everything TDT Media is doing, we're going to continue what we are doing here. So again, for those of you who don't know, this is going to be fairly short and sweet, no more than 20 minutes or so. And for anybody who doesn't like what I talk about, it's the MJ Hurley Show. I'm going to talk about my teams. I'm going to talk about the things that are relevant to me. And if you have something you'd like me to talk about, go ahead, drop it in the comments of wherever you're watching. For one more additional piece of context, I'm recording right about halftime of the Chiefs game. So when I talk about the NFL playoffs later, I won't talk about the Chiefs game because I do not have my official result yet. So with that being said, the first thing that we're going to go over in general is just going to be the NFL playoffs. So the NFL playoffs have been incredible so far. And most specifically, I want to give a huge shout out to the Baltimore Ravens. The biggest player in football right now is Lamar Jackson. And the biggest reason for that is his willingness to throw the football. What the Baltimore front office has done to create an ability in that offense for Lamar to run or pass whenever he so chooses. Lamar showed you on Saturday that he can drop 100 on the ground or he can drop 300 in the air whenever he wants to. And the Houston Texans have played incredible football this year, but the biggest issue with what they've been doing is simply the fact that they have to throw the ball. Dameon Pierce is a really good young running back, but simply put it, when they got into playoff football, when they got into cold football in Baltimore, they were unable to match up with the number one seed in the NFC. Now, same as my Packers that we'll talk about a little bit later. I'm going to save them for their own special segment near the end. Same with the Packers. The Houston Texans have so much to be excited about. D'Amico Ryan and that team were not supposed to be in the playoffs this year. Not only were they not supposed to win their division, they weren't supposed to be in the playoffs. They weren't supposed to be in playoff contention. Remember, just a year ago in the 2023 NFL draft, they were able to get C.J. Stroud and Will Anderson because of how bad they were and how bad the Browns were. But because of that, they were able to get an incredible wealth of talent that led them to a very productive and a season that exceeded all of the expectations. So with that being said, the biggest question, a question that was actually posed by one of our TDT Media writers, is who can beat the Ravens? Because right now they are the best team in football. Right now they have, just flat out, they have the best team in football across the board. The additions at wide receiver, their ability to run the football, both from Lamar and their running backs, and that defense. It is going to be very hard to beat the Baltimore Ravens. Now, obviously, the favorite coming out of the NFC will probably be the San Francisco 49ers. Cy, shut up in the background. Obviously, they are going to probably be the favorites coming out of the NFC, with the 49ers and Lions facing off after the Lions took down the Bucs today. Shout out to Baker Mayfield, man. He had an incredible run. I think he's going to be the guy in Tampa Bay for a few years moving forward. It's going to be hard for Tampa Bay. We talked about this on Third Down Thursdays last week. It's going to be hard for Tampa Bay to move on with how much Baker has kind of recaptivated that fan base. After Brady retired, there were a lot of question marks about what is this team going to look like, because they went from Mr. 30 for 30 crab legs Winston to Tom Brady, and now we've got Baker, who I really think, honestly, was playing just as well as Brady played in his last year. The question will be, how did they build off of another season that exceeded expectations and see if they can go win their division again next year, improve the defense, keep Mike Evans and Chris Godwin around, sell them on the fact that, hey, this is something we can build on for years. I think that's probably going to be the team in the NFC South for years to come. But we'll see. First things first, they got to keep Baker. And the real question is 49ers or Lions. Can either of them beat the Ravens? I don't think so. All due respect to Dan Campbell, all due respect to Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers. I think the Baltimore Ravens are better. And I think Lamar is playing the best football of anyone in the NFL right now. And it's going to be hard to, I mean, Bruce says it all the time, and I disagree with him all the time, but like, quarterback is the most important position on the field. Lamar is going to be the MVP. When you have the MVP and when you're able to let him do so many things multidimensionally on offense, it's really hard to beat. So my official prediction, I'm going to give it out now. For those of you who watch Third Down Thursdays, I'll say it again on Thursday. I don't care who comes out of the NFC. If the Baltimore Ravens make the Super Bowl, they are winning the Super Bowl. And one more thing before we move on to some NBA talk. For those of you who actually think, and there's one TDT media writer who I know has said this, and I know a lot of people have said this on TikTok, on social media, because of the whole logo colors in the Super Bowl logo. The fact that they're seeing purple and yellow and gold, which is supposed to be Ravens and 49ers. They've seen that in years past, and it supposedly dictates the winner. Like, just the fact that you think with how high level these guys are playing, you see when you watch WWE how fake it is, right? Like, everybody comprehends WWE is fake. The NFL is not fake. You can understand that, right? So let's calm down with the whole NFL is rigged deal. Let's calm down with the whole they're planning the Super Bowl multiple years in advance. Let's just slow our roll on that officially once and for all. Thank you very much. Next thing I would like to talk about is my good old Golden State Warriors. And this is something Bruce and I talked about on Thursday, but I want to give it a little bit more of an official discussion, right? Because I think it's time to say goodbye. It's time to say goodbye to the current Warriors dynasty as you have it. And this man, Stephen Curry, Wardell Stephen Curry III, he has done so much for the Golden State Warriors. He has done so much for the Bay Area, for San Francisco, for Oakland. What he has done for that community, for that economy, is incredible. You can't discount it. The amount he has changed the game of basketball. But unfortunately, the game has caught up. Connor brought up a great point the other day, saying that if you took the 2015-16 Warriors, when Curry was unanimous MVP, they went 73-9. You know, they broke so many NBA records. If you took that offense and brought it into current day, they would be 15th in the NBA in scoring points per game. And that just goes to show how much the NBA has changed. And again, shout out to Steph Curry. He is the reason. It's not LeBron. It's not KD. It's not anybody else. Steph Curry is the reason that the game looks the way it is today. But unfortunately, as Steph Curry adapted early, he's no longer the young buck. And young teams like Minnesota, young teams like OKC, Boston, they are the ones adapting. And Curry and company in Golden State are the ones falling behind. So it's unfortunate to see Clay, to see Draymond really fall off behind what they were in their primes. The best thing the Golden State could do would be keep Curry and go as young as possible around him. There needs to be a big deal made. It's not a perfect comparison, but similar to what the Celtics did, trading KG, trading Paul Pierce. Like, they need something to try and revolutionize what they have and get a little jump start. Unfortunately for Clay, unfortunately for Draymond, they just are not the guys anymore. The Warriors have an incredible amount of young talent behind them, right? Moses Moody, Jonathan Kuminga, Brandon Pozinski, Trace Jackson Davis. They have some really good young players, but when you kind of quote unquote have to play a starting lineup of Curry, Clay, Wiggins, Draymond, Looney, doesn't give much room in a winning type program for the young guys to play. So the Warriors have to make a decision. What they have right now is not working. They need to make a decision. I don't think they're going to make the tough call that they probably should. That's most likely something that's going to come in the offseason. I don't think they're going to make a massive trade before the NBA trade deadline. I think they should, but unfortunately, I don't think that's something that Steve Kerr and the Warriors will end up pulling off. But something that you should always pull off, Cy, you know what that is? You should always pull off a good deal for some car insurance.
Erie Insurance says here's to the grown-ups who move, mortgage, mow, and still bust a move. But does your home insurance still fit? Erie helps you protect the home you've grown into, all at fair prices that are often less than the other guys. So how do you find the right coverage? Magic. Nope. Local independent agents who get to know you like this.
Your local Erie agent is Building Block Insurance Group. Get a quote today at 704-464-4544.
Erie Insurance.
Make sure to email jeff@mybebig.com. Let him know that Third Down Thursdays, TDT Media and MJ Hurley sent you, and he'll hook you up with some good car or home, any kind of insurance that you may need. With that being said, last thing before we get to a little bit of a Senior Bowl preview, I got to talk about the Green Bay Packers. And I'm going to do this here because I know that Bruce is going to have some things to say on Thursday. So we're going to talk about the future for the Green Bay Packers right here, without the outside distractions that will come on Third Down Thursdays. So the Packers lost yesterday to the 49ers, 24-21. Again, Cy, all due respect, the 49ers should not have won that football game. Praise to them, they did win the football game. But the way that the Packers played for the majority of that game, the Packers should have won. Now, that's what happens when you have a young team. That's what happens when you have the youngest offense in the NFL, the youngest team to make the playoffs since the 1970s. Also, side note, I love the fact that the last youngest team to make the playoffs was the Bears, and the Packers just stole another record from the Bears. Makes me really happy. But when you have such a young team, it's going to happen where mistakes will be made. And you saw that not just from Jordan Love, but from other guys as well. There were drops, there were blown coverages, there were dropped interceptions, there were penalties, there were mental mistakes. And yes, the biggest things you're going to look at are the 2 interceptions from Jordan Love and the missed field goal from Anders Carlson. So we'll talk about the special teams first, and then we'll kind of work our way from there. In terms of Anders Carlson, I have 2 comments first and foremost. Number one, there should have at least been some sort of veteran competition for Carlson at some point during this year. I understand Rich Bisaccia's interest in Carlson originally because he's the brother of the kicker, Daniel Carlson, that Bisaccia had when Bisaccia was in Vegas coaching for the Raiders. So I understand the affinity he might have for Anders Carlson and why he might have wanted to bring him on in the first place. But looking from Matt LaFleur's perspective, looking from a head coaching perspective, it was just a flat-out error. Carlson missed a kick in 10 out of his last 12 games. That affected football games, and the Packers lost some close games, including a 3-point loss to the San Francisco 49ers in the divisional round. And so if you're Matt LaFleur, this has to be something that gets addressed in the offseason. I'm okay with keeping Carlson around, but to not provide any competition whatsoever, any nudge saying, hey, if you don't get this together, there's going to be somebody who will take your job, because Carlson was not a good kicker in college. He never had a year in his 4 years in college where he had a 90% or better success rate as a kicker. So this is not unusual for Carlson. This is not a blip on his track record. This is his track record. He misses kicks. He's got a great leg. He can kick the ball really far, but he is not accurate whatsoever. So if Matt LaFleur wants to continue to improve this team, the biggest thing has to be that for years, barring his rookie year and 1 year in 2014, Mason Crosby was an anchor for the Packers. And before that, they had Ryan Longwell, who was an anchor. That's one thing that the Packers have done really well, aside from drafting quarterbacks, is having really good kickers who will make field goals. The rest of their special teams may be a mess, but when Mason Crosby trotted out on that field, I had confidence that that ball was going through the uprights. So then we'll get to the offense very quickly. I don't think there's a lot of confusion around this offense. Jordan Love, from week 9 to week 18, was one of the best quarterbacks in football. And that is not hyperbole. That is statistics. When you look at any statistic for an NFL quarterback, as I watched the Bills and Chiefs randomly fight before halftime, go to halftime. They kneeled. Get out of here. Anyway, when you look at stats, Jordan Love was one of the best quarterbacks under pressure in the second half of the season. He was one of the best deep ball passers in the second half of the season. And for the last 9 games of the season, he had a touchdown to interception ratio of 21-1. Those 9 games rivaled any stretch of 9 games from Aaron Rodgers or Brett Favre in their entire Hall of Fame careers. So if you can't look at me right here and say Jordan Love deserves to be the franchise quarterback for the Green Bay Packers, I don't know what to tell you, because he has shown that he has the talent. He has shown that he is a leader of that offense. And in Matt LaFleur's own words, he is going to be our franchise quarterback for years to come. So if you're a Packer fan, go Pack, go, get on that train, because the Love train ain't stopping any time soon. He is going to be the franchise quarterback. He's going to get an extension this offseason, and they're going to build and continue to build that young offense around him. Now, the other question is going to be that defense, and they've got a really young defense as well. They've got some veterans, but still, the oldest player on that defense is 28, 29 years old, right? So they've got a lot of questions, and that starts with their defensive coordinator, Joe Barry. Will he be retained? Will he be the defensive coordinator next year? I think his entire body of work from this season says no. He improved in the last 2 games, right? But even then, against the Cowboys, when they had an incredible lead, I believe it was 48-16 or something like that, Joe Barry blew it so badly in the fourth quarter that the Packers had to put their starters back in. So do I think Joe Barry should be the defensive coordinator next year for the Packers? No. Do I think he will be the defensive coordinator for the Packers next year? Unfortunately, there's a decent chance. And it's not to say that he can't improve, right? And it's not to say that some of the play on the field was not good. You have to acknowledge that Jair Alexander, when he was on the field this year, was not himself, and he was off of the field a lot this year. You have to acknowledge that. Eric Stokes was not on the field this year. They traded Rasul Douglas in the middle of the season, assuming that they wouldn't make a playoff run, and that ended up hurting them as well. I think there's a lot of positives on the defensive line. The linebacking core has to get better. And so when you look at the actual players, the safeties were terrible, right? Joe Barry didn't have as much to work with as we thought he would have this year. But flat out, as the defensive coordinator for the Green Bay Packers, one of the most storied franchises in all of sports, you have to do better. And if you're going to have a 3rd straight Hall of Fame quarterback, for the love of all that's good and right in this holy world, please get a better defensive coordinator in that door. So with that being said, I think the Packers are going to be very good for years to come because they have a good quarterback once again. I apologize to Bears fans. I apologize to fans of the NFC North who have to see this for probably another 10 years, but it is the reality because Jordan Love, in my words, is that guy. So with that being said, the last thing I do want to talk about today is what we're going to be doing next week at the Reese Senior Bowl in Mobile, Alabama. And first and foremost, I want to give a huge shout out to Jim Nagy, who is the executive director of the Senior Bowl, and Molly Middleton, who is the communications director for the Senior Bowl. The access that those two provide for media like us, for people like TDT Media, who not only love football, but are trying to make our mark in the coverage of football, in the coverage of sports, in analyzing sports, analyzing film. Everything that we do is made possible for the Senior Bowl by Jim Nagy and by Molly Middleton. The access that we will have during that week is incredible. Breakfast where we can just go sit down across the table from a player and talk to them for 10, 20 minutes. The ability to talk to them after every single practice. You don't get that anywhere else. So thank you to the Senior Bowl for what we will be able to do next week and what we have been able to do in the last 3 years. With that being said, what can you expect from TDT Media, from me, TDT Media, and everybody else who will be there? A little bit of this. This was me last year at the Senior Bowl in my hotel room. I got sunburnt the first day because my northern self didn't realize that Mobile is hot. Even in February, it is hot. So, you can see in the hotel, I'll go with some rolled up sleeves. I will look professional while I'm there, right? I'm a suit guy. I know Jackson is as well. I think Sai is going to be wearing a tux a couple days, I believe. I don't know what Connor is going to be rolling out. But we're going to have 4 of us there. So there's going to be a lot of coverage both this week before the Senior Bowl, during the week of the Senior Bowl, and the week after. So those 3 weeks are going to be our biggest chunk of Senior Bowl coverage. And then as always, TDT Media will be at the Combine and we will be at the draft. So if you want player profiles, both video and written, we're going to have those coming in the next 3 weeks. We're going to have clips of one-on-ones, a lot of those. when we get to the Senior Bowl, because I know that's what you guys love to see. And then we're just going to have interview after interview after interview. We're already going to be talking to some guys this week before the Senior Bowl. We'll talk to them while we're there, and then we're going to talk to them after the fact. So I'm very excited about that. And again, thank you to the Senior Bowl, because it is legitimately my favorite week of the year to be there in Mobile. And thank you to Jackson, Connor, and Cy, who are going to be working alongside me, helping me out with all these player profiles, with all the research and all of the actual, content while we are in Mobile. Going to be a very exciting week, and I cannot wait for that. And with that being said, that's all I have today for the MJ Hurley Show. Thank you again to Cy for helping me produce in the background. He's going to be doing some more work for us in the future, so look out for him. And, all those player profiles I talked about, we've already recorded some. We're going to have more coming out, so go to the YouTube channel if you're already here and check out those player profiles. Take a look at what you're going to see during the week at the Senior Bowl and see who your next favorite player might be. So with that being said, thank you again to Erie Insurance for sponsoring us. Take a little look at their home insurance and what they can do for you. We'll see you next week.